Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Aliano. Kenji Yamada, Concord resident. I want to first thank you for the work you've put into preparing these recommendations, and I want to call out a couple of items in them that are really helpful and I think important. First, the idea of requiring annual leases be offered to tenants. That's some real protection. It's helpful. And also the idea of supporting development of nonprofit housing and permanently affordable housing. The city has a lot of role to play in that. I also want to appreciate, Councilmember Aliano, your advocacy for a just cause policy. We could talk about the details, but the general idea is very important to get into the report, and I appreciate that you made sure that happened. However, Councilmember Aliano, you have said repeatedly throughout the election campaign last year, in which I was your opponent, which you won, that you supported rent stabilization, an actual cap on the amount of rent increases. I don't see that advocacy here in that report. You have repeated your support for it verbally in various conversations since then up to the present. So since you have the authority to unilaterally direct staff to add that recommendation from yourself into this draft before it goes to the full council, I invite you to do so. The goal of this process is to come up with a balanced policy, a policy that balances legitimate needs. One of those is the need of property owners to realize a reasonable rate of return on their investment. That is a legitimate need, and if policy should serve that. The other is for the stability of our communities and of Concord residents to stay in their homes. The threshold for a limit on increases in rent that would match that goal is to allow rent increases to track inflation. That's CPI. There's some argument about whether it should be all of CPI because there's housing prices themselves counted in CPI, which adds recursion, but that to the side. Plus allowing some amount on top of that for those cost increases, which landlords sometimes suffer on a case-by-case basis, like property tax increases, sewer costs, et cetera. That is a threshold of rent increase allowance, which allows balance. And that's where the negotiations start, Councilmember Aliano, if that is your goal. And I understand, Mayor Obringer, you have opposed that policy, and that is, of course, your prerogative to set your position. But I want to note that Councilmember Aliano has stated his support and has the ability to add that support into the report where it currently is not to be found.